Have you ever stopped to think if the people you trust really want the best for you? Sometimes it's hard to tell, but many relationships that seem solid and friendly hide subtle signs that the other person may be trying to destroy you emotionally. And worst of all, many of these actions are so disguised that it's almost impossible to see the intention behind them. When someone acts with bad intentions, it's easy to fall into their game without even realizing it. You may be dealing with someone who is bringing you down, undermining your confidence, manipulating your feelings, or even trying to isolate you, all without you realizing it. In this video, you'll discover 10 subtle signs that show that someone may be destroying you without you realizing it. These signs aren't obvious, but if you're aware, you can prevent this person from having the power to affect your life in such a negative way. Now that you understand the seriousness of being surrounded by people who may not have the best intentions, let's dive into the first sign that you need to watch out for. You know, that compliment that seems harmless, but actually carries much more weight. Those seemingly kind words like, "I don't know how you did that, I could never do that." At first glance, it seems like a form of admiration. But what is really being said here? The compliment has a disguised tone of admiration, but in reality, it is putting you in a lower position. It is a subtle way of diminishing your achievement, making you question yourself. Was I really that good? Or even worse, it can even create insecurity in you, creating a gap where there was once confidence. This type of behavior is extremely insidious. It is not a direct attack, but it gradually erodes your self-confidence, creating doubts where there should be none. Over time, you may begin to believe that you are really not as capable as you thought. And when this happens, the person who is giving you the disguised compliments is the one who benefits from it. You have to learn to identify this type of behavior. If someone, instead of supporting you in your victories, makes this type of comment, it is a clear sign that something is not right. Don't let anyone use seemingly positive words to make you doubt your own worth. Now that you know how words can be used to undermine your confidence, let's move on to the next sign that is equally insidious, but a little easier to identify. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and when someone disrespects your time, they are in fact telling you that you are not important. Disrespect for your time is a clear sign that this person does not value your presence or your priorities. Imagine that you arranged to meet someone and that person is constantly late, or worse, simply ignores the appointment without even apologizing. Or perhaps they ask you for favors at inconvenient times, expecting you to drop everything to accommodate them. This behavior is a subtle but effective way of devaluing your life. When someone doesn't respect your time, they are telling you that you are worthless. They are putting you in a position where you always have to adapt to their wishes without considering what you need or what is important to you. Over time, this can affect your well-being and even your performance in other areas of your life, such as work or relationships. This is not just annoying behavior, it is a form of manipulation. Because by devaluing you, the person is putting you in a position where you begin to feel like you have to constantly sacrifice yourself, while they do not do the same for you. It is time to stop and reflect. Your time is valuable, and no one should have the right to ignore it without consequences. If time is something that should be respected, another equally important factor that is often manipulated in relationships is your own emotions. And that leads to the next sign. Emotional manipulation is one of the hardest signs to spot because it often disguises itself as concern or help. Have you ever noticed how certain people always manage to make you feel guilty, even when there's no reason to? They know exactly how to play on your emotions, making you believe that you're always in the wrong or that you don't understand their situation. Phrases like, "I'm just trying to help you," or "I care so much about you." That's why I'm saying this are subtle ways of manipulating your decisions and emotions. They present themselves as a way of caring for you, but in reality, they're trying to control your actions. The problem is that over time, you start to question yourself. Do I really not understand the situation? Or am I doing everything wrong? This type of doubt planted in your mind undermines your self-confidence and leaves you vulnerable to manipulation. Someone who subtly manipulates your emotions will never admit that they are doing so. Instead, they will convince you that they are acting in your best interest, when in reality, they are simply trying to shape the situation to their advantage. The trick here is to learn to recognize these signs of manipulation. The first time someone uses this type of behavior with you, stop and think, does he really care about me, or is he trying to control the situation for his own benefit? Once you realize the game being played, you can start making more informed decisions and avoid falling into these emotional traps. Now that you know how emotional manipulation works, let's move on to an even sneakier but equally damaging sign. I'm only telling you this because I'm your friend, or I care so much about you, that's why I'm telling you this. These phrases are often used by those trying to manipulate you, disguising their controlling intentions as an act of friendship or genuine concern. But do they really have anything to do with your well-being? Most of the time, these statements are used to make you feel like you owe the person something. They put the weight of their friendship on your shoulders and make you believe that you can't disregard what they're saying, even when it doesn't make sense or goes against what you really want. These behaviors create a false sense of obligation. They try to convince you that they're only helping you, when in reality, they're trying to impose their will and control your decisions. By doing this, they undermine your independence and force you to make decisions that are often not the best for you. Now imagine that every time you try to make an important decision, someone acts as your friend and starts convincing you to follow a path that deep down isn't what you want. This creates a cycle of emotional dependence where you start to doubt your own choices and start to trust the other person's judgment more than your own. It's essential to learn to recognize when someone is taking advantage of your friendship to manipulate you. This is a subtle but devastating psychological game. Emotional manipulation and attempts to control you through friendship are devastating, but the next sign is even more insidious. Let's take a look at how emotional abuse starts to become normalized. Have you ever noticed how some people can justify unacceptable behavior with a simple excuse? Like when someone hurts you with harsh words and then says, "That's just the way I am. You have to accept me," or "I only said that because you pissed me off." This type of excuse is a clear way to normalize emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is much harder to identify than physical abuse because it doesn't leave visible marks. But the impact it causes is profound. It starts with small aggressions, jokes that belittle you, cruel comments disguised as humor, and then escalates to constant criticism and even emotional blackmail. And when you try to confront this person, they always have an excuse ready. "Sorry, but you know I didn't really mean it." Over time, this type of behavior becomes so common that you start to believe it's normal. You think you're overreacting to feeling hurt because this person has already made you believe your emotions are not valid. This process is insidious and happens so gradually that you don't even realize the erosion of your self-esteem until it's already very fragile. People who normalize emotional abuse often use love or friendship to manipulate and control. They know that by presenting their abusive behavior in a disguised way, you will feel guilty for pointing out what's wrong. This creates a cycle of abuse where you feel powerless and begin to question your own sanity. Understanding that emotional abuse is unacceptable, regardless of the excuses, is key to breaking this cycle. Don't allow someone to normalize toxic behaviors in your life. You deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Now that you know how emotional abuse disguises itself, it's time to talk about something equally toxic but more cruel: the other person's pleasure in seeing you fail. This is perhaps one of the most painful ways to realize that someone really wants to destroy you. When you fail, instead of receiving support or understanding, the person seems to rejoice in your failure. It is a type of pleasure disguised as irony or even false concern. Have you ever come across someone who, upon learning of a failure of yours, made a comment like, "I knew this wouldn't work out," or even a smile disguised as pity? This type of reaction is a clear sign that this person is envious of you or is rooting against your success. The pleasure of seeing someone else's failure usually comes from a feeling of competition or envy. This person, upon seeing you stumble, feels superior or reaffirms their own position of control over you. Instead of extending a hand, they observe you from above, in a place of judgment. This behavior is toxic because it goes beyond a lack of empathy. It reflects a selfish and destructive mentality, where the pain of others is a source of personal satisfaction. The impact of this is devastating as you begin to feel more isolated and less confident in your abilities. You ask yourself, "Am I not good enough?" And this, over time, can generate a vicious cycle of self-criticism. Identifying these attitudes is essential to protect yourself. If someone around you seems happy with your defeats, it is time to remove this person from your life. People like this do not deserve space in your path. Now that you know how this person can be happy with your failures, it is time to understand how many times they try to put you in situations that are harmful to you but advantageous to them. Some people have an extraordinary ability to convince you to make decisions that are clearly bad for you, but that directly benefit their interests. They are experts in making you accept unfavorable conditions. Whether in a business deal, a relationship, or even a simple favor. Imagine someone saying, "This is going to be great for you to do. I'm sure it will work out, and you'll see how much you'll benefit from it." But when you look more closely, you realize that this opportunity only benefits the other person. They're pushing you into something that, deep down, will hurt you in some way. It could be a disadvantageous financial arrangement, a commitment that will take up all your time, or a situation that you can't afford. But this person has a way of making you feel guilty if you don't accept. This type of manipulation is strategic. The person knows exactly how to use your goodwill, your lack of experience, or even your need to please to convince you that this decision is the best one. They use your trust as a currency to get what they want, while you find yourself trapped in a situation that isn't good for you. Recognizing these behaviors is vital. Don't be afraid to say no when something doesn't make sense to you, even if the person tries to convince you that it's the best option. Protect your decisions and your interests. When someone tries to push you into a bad deal, the only thing you need to do is walk away. If you thought that this manipulation of deals was the height of emotional destruction, the next sign is a little more subtle, but just as devastating. Small, seemingly harmless lies can be more dangerous than you think. The kind of lies that don't cause much damage, but that little by little create a web of mistrust and confusion. People who lie about small things like, "Oh, I already did that," or "I sent you the message, you just didn't see it," are creating a parallel reality where you start to question what really happened. These lies aren't about big life issues. They're about the trivial. When someone says they did something that in reality they never did, or when they lie about something simple, like what was said in a previous conversation. At first you may think you are exaggerating, but over time, these lies create such a distortion in your perception of reality that you begin to ask yourself, do I really trust this person? Manipulation through small lies is a form of psychological control. With these lies, the person makes you believe that you are always making mistakes or that you are missing something important. This causes deep emotional distress because you begin to doubt your own memory and perception, and as the lies accumulate, you lose control of the situation. The key to dealing with these lies is to maintain your clarity of mind. If someone is constantly lying about small details, take a step back and reevaluate the trust you place in them. Small lies can be the beginning of much more destructive behavior. Now that you know how lies can distort reality, let's explore one of the most insidious signs: social isolation. Social isolation is one of the most powerful strategies used by those who want to destroy you. Instead of direct attacks, this person begins to alienate you from your friends, family, and support networks, creating an environment where you feel increasingly lonely and dependent on them. This doesn't happen all at once, but rather through a series of small actions that subtly distance you from your social circle. They may start saying things like, "I don't really like those people. They don't seem like good for you," or "You should spend more time with me. I understand you better than anyone else." The goal here is not only to distance you from the people around you, but also to make you believe that they are the only one who truly cares about you. This behavior is manipulative and aims to create a bond of emotional dependence where you begin to believe that you can't trust anyone other than this person. Over time, you realize that you are increasingly isolated without the emotional support that you once received from others. This isolation makes you vulnerable. The further away you are from your support network, the easier it becomes for the manipulative person to control your emotions and decisions. Social isolation is not just about physically distancing you from other people, but also about convincing you that, on some level, you don't need them. This feeling of loneliness and dependence is what creates the foundation for the person who is trying to destroy you, to take control of your life. If you notice that you are distancing yourself from the people who love you and have always supported you, open your eyes. Isolation is one of the most powerful weapons of emotional manipulation and is often the first step towards losing your autonomy. Isolation is a very effective tactic, but we cannot forget the last and most crucial sign: the gradual destruction of your self-sufficiency. This final sign can be the key to realizing whether someone is really trying to destroy you from the inside out. The destruction of self-sufficiency is the height of emotional manipulation. The person who wants to destroy you begins to convince you that you cannot live without them, that you are not capable of making decisions on your own, or that your life will only make sense if you depend on them. They undermine your confidence in such a profound way that eventually you begin to doubt your own ability to cope with life. It may seem small at first, for example, by making you feel like you can't handle simple tasks without their help. "I know you won't be able to do this right, leave it to me," or "You don't know what you're doing, let me take care of everything." These attitudes, although they may seem helpful at first glance, are disguised ways of making you believe that you are incapable of doing things on your own. The idea behind this is to create emotional and practical dependence. When someone starts to control your actions, even the simplest ones, you lose control over your own life. The feeling that you can't make decisions without consulting that person starts to become a reality in your mind. As a result, the person gradually takes control over your life, your choices, and even your identity. This process of destroying self-sufficiency is insidious because it is disguised as care. But by making you doubt your own competence, the person is creating a space where you can no longer do anything without them. It's a cycle of control that starts with small insecurities and gradually takes over your life. When you start to notice that you're losing your ability to act for yourself, it's time to stop and reevaluate. You don't have to depend on anyone to be who you are. Rebuilding your self-sufficiency is crucial to regaining control of your life. Now that you know the 10 signs that someone may be trying to destroy you, it's time to reflect on the relationships in your life. Many times these people aren't necessarily bad or intentional in their malice, but the way they act deeply affects your self-esteem and well-being. Identifying these signs is the first step to protecting yourself from those who may be manipulating and controlling you. Remember, you deserve respect, trust, and above all, emotional freedom. When you notice that someone is trying to control your emotions, your choices, and your independence, don't be afraid to set boundaries, and if necessary, cut that person out of your life. Your peace of mind and well-being are a priority. Change begins with awareness. By becoming more aware of these signs, you will be better prepared to walk away from relationships that do not serve you and seek out those that truly support you and help you grow. Now that you know the traps that people can use to destroy you emotionally, it is time to take action. Protect yourself, strengthen your confidence, and never allow anyone to make you doubt your worth. You have the right to live a full life, free from manipulation and negative influences. If you have recognized any of these signs in someone around you, it is time to walk away and move forward with the certainty that the best is yet to come. The key to a healthy and balanced life is learning to identify these attitudes and having the courage to distance yourself from them.